ہمارے درمیان موجود ہیں حسن بیگ صاحب. کئی حوالوں سے ان کی پرسنالٹی بڑی ملٹی ڈائمینشنل ہے. ویسے اسکاٹ لینڈ سے تعلق ہے, ڈاکٹر فزیشین ہیں, لیکن ہمارے لیے خوش قسمتی کی بات یہ ہے کہ ہی از اے ہسٹورین ایز ویل. ہمارا بہت عرصے پہلے یہاں ان سے تعارف ہوا تھا. میرا خیال ہے یہ تھرڈ ٹائم ہے. میں حسن بیگ صاحب کا شکریہ بھی ادا کرتی ہوں کہ وہ تیسری دفعہ پنجاب یونیورسٹی ہسٹری ڈپارٹمنٹ میں تشریف لا رہے ہیں. ہمارے لیے اس لیے بہت زیادہ محترم ہے, ہسٹورین ہونے کے ساتھ ساتھ مغل ہسٹری سے ان کا شغف ہے, اور ان کی کئی ایک تصنیفات ہماری لائبریری میں بھی موجود ہیں, اور آپ شاید سامنے بھی ان کی کتابوں کو دیکھ سکتے ہیں. تو ایز اے ہسٹورین وقائع بابر, ان کا جو کام میرا خیال ہے ظہیر الدین بابر, ہی از اے گریٹ لور آف ظہیر الدین بابر. انہوں نے وہ سارے ٹریک کو بھی خود اپنی آنکھوں سے دیکھنے کی کوشش کی. یہاں سے بابر نے ہندوستان پر حملہ کیا تھا. پھر دوسرا اہم کام بیرم خان کے حوالے سے ہے. اس کے بعد خانِ خانامہ اور معاصر رحیمی ان کا کام میں شامل ہیں. اور ریسنٹلی جو ہم تک ان کی کتاب جو ہے وہ پہنچی ہے وہ کرائے آف اے ولڈرنیس ہے, جس میں شارٹ ایسیز کے حوالے سے سینٹرل ایشیا اور بابر کے بارے میں بات کی جا رہی ہے. تو آج جو جس پہ یہ فوکس کیے ہوئے آپ کے سامنے بھی ہے, ان سرچ آف بابر, لیکن بابر ایز این ایکڈیمک پرسن کو آج حسن بیگ صاحب ہمارے سامنے رکھیں گے, اور میرا خیال ہے تمام لوگ, تمام جو بیٹھی ہوئی آڈینس ہے وہ ان سے مستفید ہونے کی کوشش کرے گی. اب میں آپ کے اور ان کے درمیان زیادہ حائل نہیں رہوں گی, تو میں ڈاکٹر صاحب سے ریکویسٹ کروں گی کہ وہ آئیں یہاں پر اور آپ کے ساتھ بابر کے حوالے سے اپنے تاثرات اور خیالات کا اظہار کریں.
Dear colleagues and friends, I'm thankful to Professor Mehboob Hussain and the staff of his department to invite me to come and share my experiences of Zahiruddin Babar. I had a chance to visit Uzbekistan on 3 different occasions. So part of the story which I am going to tell you is my travel there and Babar's story which is mentioned in Waqai Babar or Babarnama. So we start with this, the fact that he was born in 1483, and this was in Andijan, and then he died in 1530, which was in Agra. Now we are talking about the area of Uzbekistan, which is in Central Asia, and the eastern part of Uzbekistan, which was at that time was really Turkestan, is the valley of Fargana, which is now in Uzbekistan. He passed majority of his life in Kabul, and he used to love Kabul. And then he took over India in 1525. We are dealing with this central area of, which you can see, Fargana and Andijan, which is obviously, as you can see, on the eastern side of Tashkent, which is the capital of Uzbekistan. The important cities which he describes in Waqai Babar is Fargana and Ush and Andijan, and this a place called Namangan, which is a new name for his town, which he has described. Next, please. The person on the left is the person we are talking about, and if you see, he has always been portrayed with a book, and he has always been portrayed with these fruits, which many of which he brought from Central Asia and planted it in India. I think you can see the pomegranate or anar there and other fruits, and so he brought these things and implanted them in India. On the top is his mother's ancestor Genghis Khan, and on the bottom is his father's ancestor, which is Amir Taimur. He was the first Mughal emperor, and his story is important, and I feel that he is one of the main heroes of Mughal India, because his story is the story of rags to riches. He was a king, he lost everything, then he regained it on his own. ultimately, when the Mughal empire was formed, it was ruling about 100 million people from Badakhshan to Bihar, and it's an empire which has more population than Uzbeks of the Central Asia, Safavids of Iran, and even Ottoman Empire. The only other rival which was China, which was much more populated. He contributed towards the massive conversion of Muslims into the India, because he brought with him, which I will talk later, a fiqh which is more prevalent in India. He was very proud of being a Turk. I think it is not really right to call him Mughal, because he himself used to say that I am a Turk and I am very proud of it. His mother, but unfortunately his father died when the father was only 39 years of age. So his, brought up when he became a king was by his mother, which is Qatlaq Nigar Khanam, and maternal grandfather Ahsan Daulat Begum was a very strong woman, and she was the controlling authority when Babur was young man of 11 and 12 years of age. And also contributed to his development was his maternal grandfather, which is Yunus Khan. In his life, he has always been influenced by the Sufis, especially Khwaja Abdullah Ahrar, and he has always carried books of Taimur, his ancestor, with him whenever he traveled. He was very impressed by the ashars of Ali Sher Nawai and Sultan Hussain Beqara, which was his uncle, and Khan the Mir, which was a sheikh of the religion which he depended on. Now we are entering Fargana, and this is just in the what we call in the Bahar region of the Fargana. This is the pass through which you have to pass through to reach Fargana. And when we reach Fargana, we have statue of Babur. In fact, there are 3 statues of Babur in Andijan. The passage is called Kemchuk Pass, and I think it's really quite high mountain pass which we have to pass through to reach. And it is only because of the fact that since Uzbekistan has become liberated, then the Fargana Valley has been divided into 3 different regions between Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. In Andijan, this is Haveli, which has been reconstructed, and it's all newly built. It has got a large palace inside, and it's got rooms which have libraries, and also that there is a statue there as well. But you can see the beauty of the door, which is carved door, and I think this is quite frequent in Uzbekistan that they do woodwork which is very carved one. Now we are at Aksi. Aksi was the town which his father was living at and making it a capital, but unfortunately it has been destroyed by the earthquake. At the moment, it's like a mound, Aksi mound. Babur in his biography describes that how his father died, and he in a rather a critical way, he says that my father went up on his kabutar khana or pigeon house, which fell in the ravine which is in front of the house, and then he flew with the kabutar khana and became a falcon. Another town which is called Kashan, which he described very well, because along the Kashan river or Kashan water, what he says, there were lots of gardens, and he describes them as Postine Peshbara. So this is another town which is now in Kyrgyzstan, and he describes this mountain, Barako mountain, and in the top of the mountain he made a Baradari there. Baradari, which is not there at the moment, but it's been pointed out that that's where it used to be. But he used to sit there and enjoy the countryside and see the people and the bazaar. Hujan he describes very well as well, which is a town nearby. It got a very strong castle, and he was particularly concerned. Next, please. He was particularly concerned with the Sheikh Masalihat of Hujan, because Sheikh Masalihat is buried in this mausoleum, and he was the one who brought the good wishes of him, Barbar, conquering Samarkand. So this was the prediction made by Sheikh Masalihat of Hujan. He also describes this small town of Kunde Badam. He says that this place is important because it has lots of badam, and it's called now Kuni Badam is called now. And the important fact is that you have heard about Kagzi Badam.
Yes.
That's where it comes from. He also describes this town of Asfara, and there is a small river flowing there, and there are chai khanas on both sides of the river. The best plow you can get in Tajikistan is from Asfara. That's his great grandfather's mausoleum, Amir Taimur, and the other person, which is Khwaja Ubedullah Erar's mazar, is there, which is open to sky. Once he was in that area of Hujan, it was a very difficult period for him, because the resources of the Hujan was very limited, and he passed about a year in the mountains of Hujan, but he has no government because he has lost everything because of the infighting of the cousins and uncles. So he, at 22 years of age, he decided that I have to leave my country and go south, and he chose to go to Khurasan. He lived in Kabul for about 21 years, and he planted about 10 gardens in Kabul. He describes Kabul lavishly. He says the Kabul has got everything, like it's got rivers, it's got grass for the horses, and it has a number of places where he can enjoy. It has mountains and it has grounds as well. One of the important aspect, this is another garden which was built by him, but what I want to impress on you is that Babar is the first person who has described the tribes of Kabul and Pathan, because they were never described in that detail of the Afghanistan. So he is one of the first person that has described the tribes and their movement and how they survive and live and travel. Once he was in Istanbul, which he governed for a short period, his sister was lost to Kaibani Khan. So he met his sister about after 10 years in Kunduz, Sister Khanzada Begum in Kunduz, after 10 years of separation. Babar was quite happy for about 21 years period, but I think he says that there is a limited income from the tribes, and it is very difficult to collect taxes. In 504, when he came here, he tried to do explorations of the region which is now in Pakistan. So there are different, the usual described travels are about 5, but I think the main one described is the one in 1504, which is traveling that way up to, and then there is another one which in 1519, which he traveled to Khar or in northern Pakistan. And also the last one was in 1525, which he traveled all the way through right up to Panipat. He obviously passed through Khyber Pass. He calls Khyber Pass a low passage, because he has seen the mountain passes or passages which are much higher, like Hindu Kush and others. When he was traveling to Hindustan, then he used to travel at a high place in Khyber Pass, which is really this masjid called Ali Masjid, and his lashkar used to stay downstairs in the valley, and he has described that when they used to put shamas at night, it used to be a beautiful picture to watch. This is Khar town in Bajaur, which he took in about 2 hours' time. He came there, he stayed there for 2 hours and conquered it. And the advantage of taking Khar was the northern part of Pakistan was his, he used what he calls tufangs, which is bandooks, and which he used here. Down is the Damcoat mountain or Charkada, and you can see that white spot which is called Churchill Picket. So unfortunately, we have not yet realized how to appreciate our own heroes, but we do that for the foreigners. Gorakh Chhatri is at Peshawar, which he has called at Parshawar, where Hindus used to come and have their beards cut and mouth stitches as well shaved. While traveling in various regions of Pakistan, he has seen rhinoceros and had described that how he has done the hunting of the rhinoceros in this microfilm. Further down, he went to Parhala, and this is on the Lehtra road, which goes from Rawalpindi up to the north, and there is this part of the castle which is still left there, and a gate there which is can be seen even now if you go there. We are at Kalar Kahar, which I am sure many of you must have seen, because this is the leftover of his takhat, which is at Kalar Kahar, and he has also he planted a bagh called Bagh-e-Safa, but I think at the moment there is no bagh, it's all jungle there. First saw Rehat when he came to Punjab. He has never seen a Rehat before he coming to Punjab. He reaches Panipat. Now the important fact is that his Lashkar was very organized, with Farangis and Tufangs, and the left wing and the right wing and the center, and there is a reserve, and he protected himself on the left side with the trees and with the town on the right side. So this is the position why he took a strong stand there against Ibrahim, whose most of the Lashkar was like a group of people, coming and attacking him. But he has much more organized army, and which is the part which was played in his winning. He describes that his war was because of the use of Turkish bow, which has a double curve and is smaller in size, but it can throw the arrow about 600 yards. And he used to use this ring, which is worn in the thumb, which can have the string pulled back and which can throw the arrow much more longer in length. Another thing which he used was a crossbow, and this crossbow can be used to send 7 arrows one after the other. He also describes tufang, which is this banduk, or what you call, and another one is the next one is these farangis, what we call on the wheels, which is araba. So why he has won Panipat Jang, he describes that it is the use of the guns and also the use of the arrows, which were bow and arrows, which were much more lethal than the straight arrows. The important part was the horses. All these horses were part of the wars until the First World War, and he describes Arab horses, which are and have symmetrical bodies and extraordinary speed and has medium size in the body, and also the Turkmen horses, which are very large and has a narrow neck and legs but can travel longer distances. So they played an important part in his winning. He has described the horse, what we call a Tupchak horse, which is, I don't know exactly, but I think probably it is one of the Arab horses which has played a very important part and very obedient to the rider. When he reaches Agra and lives in Hindustan, he has described Hindustan very lavishly. I think the largest part of the Waqai or Babarnama is description of the animals, birds, fishes, all belonging to Hindustan, fruits, and even the persons and their character. And he says that Hindustan is full of people, and there are people who can work in every section of the world, which in construction and everything aspect. He describes Qutub Minar, and when he reaches Delhi, and then also goes to Khwaja Muinuddin. He has planted bags in Agra, and this is one of the Dilaram Bagh of Babar at Agra, and now it's called a Ram Bagh. He goes to Gwalior and inspects the statues there and destroys some of them.